You may be seated. Well, hi, I'm Allison again, and I'm excited to be bringing you the message today and connecting to God's larger story here today. I'm really excited that I've been on staff since January, so at the end of the service, please feel free and be like, hi, my name is, because I just want to keep meeting people and keep getting to know you, and that'll be really exciting for me. Now, I grew up in the Seattle area in Washington, so I'm relatively new to Minnesota. My husband Timothy and I graduated from Luther Seminary in 2012 with degrees for non-ordination ministry leadership. And actually, Timothy's mom and dad and brother are here today too, so wave to them, hi. I'm sure they love that. And all of us and their sister just ended a minivan trip to Florida and back to go to Disney World on vacation, so this is sort of like coming back to work for me, which is exciting. But if you do introduce yourself to them, I just hope that they don't recall stories about how I'm not really a morning person, even in Disney World. So that'll be a story for another day. So as we turn to the assigned reading from a lectionary that a lot of other Lutheran churches read from, the assigned gospel for today comes from the book of Luke in chapter 12. And a few of us on staff, we've been looking at Luke and seeing how Jesus' followers and his ministry has been progressing. And at this point, Jesus' popularity has really caught a lot of traction to this point. Like the first verse of chapter 12, it starts with, "Meanwhile, when the crowd gathered by the thousands so that they trampled on each other," so you can imagine this giant mob around Jesus as he's talking. And all these people start shouting these random questions at Jesus and these random requests. Like one asks, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the family inheritance with me, the family money with me." And other questions that seem to evolve around the questioner. What should I do with my money? What should I do with my family's money? What should I do with my life? What should I do about me? And to each person, Jesus answers in the same way. He says, "Do not worry." And it seems to cover all of the questions in one way or another. In this this section for today, Jesus says, "Do not be afraid, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Sell your possessions and give alms, for where your treasure is, there will your heart be also." And Jesus goes on to say, "You must also be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an unexpected hour." Now, this isn't a parable, it's not a story, it's not like we have like the mustard seed of the kingdom of God or some nice tidy story that we can wrap our minds around quickly. It's sort of Jesus' short answers to this huge mob-like crowd. And if you listen especially to that last sentence, "for the Son of Man is coming at an unexpected hour," it's almost as if Jesus is leaning down to us and sort of whispering, "Just wait. Just wait," Jesus says, "for my kingdom is coming." And God is happy about this. Luke says it is God's good pleasure to give us the kingdom of God. And as Christians, we celebrate this kingdom and live in this hope that just as Jesus rose from the dead, he will come again to redeem all, to heal all, and to save all. Now, this idea of the kingdom of God is kind of foreign language to us. At least it's sort of foreign language to me. I don't really hear about like kingdoms in the news. So what exactly is the kingdom of God? And as I see it, the kingdom of God, it's when God breaks into our world, into our reality, and brings about a new creation. We see it talked about all over the Gospels in lots of different ways. We see glimpses of it in our own world, when the corrupt are pointed out and justice is served, when a homeless person is not only fed but is given a chance, given a job to have a self-sustaining situation, when a woman is paid equal to a man doing the same job, when a child is adopted into a forever home. This is when the kingdom of God happens and breaks into our reality. In the Gospels, especially in Luke, this is identified as when the high are brought low and the low are brought high. Paul, in his letters in the New Testament, talks about how God gave the world the foolish to fool the wise. And we see the kingdom of God happening even in Mary, as she celebrates that Jesus will be her child, saying, You, talking to God, you have cast down the mighty down from their thrones and uplifted the humble of heart. You have filled the hungry with wondrous things and left the wealthy no part. It's at Christ's second arrival that we are promised that all will be fed, all will be fulfilled and healed and liberated for service in God's kingdom. Even those of us who might think we have it all, we'll discover that we might have a lot, but we still need healing and we still need redemption. We might find that we were rich in money or things or belongings, but perhaps we were poor in spirit. When I was a sophomore in high school, I got to travel outside of the U.S. Ooh, I sound very quiet all of a sudden. I was like, where did I go? I don't know. I'm going to go stand over there because I know that there's a mic there. Just a second. Maybe this will help. Okay, we'll go from here. So, when I was a sophomore in high school, I got to travel outside the U.S. for the first time when I was 16 years old. And it was on a mission trip to go to the Dominican Republic in the Caribbean. So, go to Florida, go even more south into those chain of islands that's in there, which is really fun. And we helped out with the local vacation Bible school and constructing a fence around a school in partnership with an American nonprofit. So, one of the mornings, we did the construction work, and a friend of mine, his name is Chance, we had to get more supplies up the road for our concrete mixing. And I don't know if any of you have gone on the Mexico mission trip, maybe a few hands. Lots and lots of concrete mixing. I see some hands. Yes, lots of concrete mixing, and it's kind of the same thing that we did too. So we had to walk up this bright orange dusty path that weaved in between all these hillside shacks, and they kind of looked like they were about to fall apart even as we walked. And as we walked back, we got stuck in the rain. And I'm from Seattle, so I know rain as like mist and drizzle and showers, but this was not rain. This was sudden torrential downpour. And a man and a woman emerged from the nearest home on the road. They motioned for Chance and I to come and find shelter in their house. And at first we were like, no, thank you, we'll run back, it's fine, don't worry about it. But they insisted in Spanish, which neither one of us spoke. So we ran and stood under their porch, which was about a foot deep. You can imagine sort of a foil steel sort of makeshift roof that left just enough room for people to kind of be in a line against the house and just barely be out of the rain. Now, my stranger danger senses were coming up, but honestly, what else could I have done? These American kids 3,000 miles away from home were stumbling down this road and get caught in a flash flood. And these people were saints. But at the time, I was shaking, not from the rain, but definitely from my nerves. So we came in their house, and we found that their house was one room. The kitchen, the living room, the bedroom were all in one room, and were separated by these long sort of veiled sheets hung cockamamie sort of from the ceiling. They had us sit down in these white plastic chairs, and in Spanish, they talked to us and motioned to us about this picture, this framed picture of a young man on the wall. Now, to this day, I have absolutely no idea what they were saying, but I can tell you this. They were proud of their home and of their family. They were quick to invite us into their home and show us that it's not expensive furniture, it's not a huge marble staircase that make a beautiful home. It's the pride and the love that you fill it with. And reflecting on this in the 10 years since, which is crazy because that doesn't feel like 10 years ago, but it was, it's really starting to sink in that it doesn't matter how much money you have or what kind of health benefits you might have if you're lucky enough to have them, or how big your retirement portfolio is. What matters is how you use what you use, whether it's a lot or little, to make this world a more peaceful and a more loving place. In my abundance, growing up in a middle to high class family, mostly Caucasian with heterosexual parents, my family was in a place of privilege and paid my way to go on this tropical trip to bring Jesus and love to these poor, destitute people in the Dominican Republic who have so little. But these Dominicans did not need me or anyone to bring God and love to them. They brought God's love to me in a completely unexpected way. See, this is what the kingdom of God is all about. God brings about a new creation and a new order in which our preconceived ideas about power and what is the best and what is the most desirable get completely turned upside down. God breaks into our world as neighbor serves neighbor, as friend serves friend, as stranger serves stranger. And it's something that as the people of the resurrected Jesus, we live in hope and that we're participating in God's larger love and redemption and liberation for all. We see glimpses of this love in the now, like when this couple invited us into their home. And we also see this in the not yet, meaning that these glimpses happen, but we also live in the hope that in the future, Christ will come again to reconcile and to heal and love all in the most unconditional way that we have ever seen. I mean, talk about the world or the Western world's concept of individualism and instant gratification. These humble and hospitable people in the Dominican Republic, by our culture's standards, with no running water, no electricity, they have nothing. But if we look at this quote by Anne Frank, she says, "No one became poor by giving. No one became poor by giving." These are the glimpses of the kingdom of God that we are so unprepared for, and yet God continues to show up. Now, we know God mostly fully, or we know the kingdom of God most fully through the person of Jesus, who gave us this ultimate example of this crazy flip-flop. Christ, the awaited Messiah, the King, we wanted him to come in this form of this big, tough, masculine person who's huge, and yet God gave us this small, tiny baby that you could hold in one arm. Timothy and I just met our friends. They just had a baby 2 weeks ago. And like fingertip to like the middle, like just so tiny. That is the king that God sent to save us. We expected God to save us all by a sweeping gesture of glory and strength and power and muscles. God liberated us from sin and death by suffering in Jesus on a cross as the kings of the world publicly tortured and killed this person. The Romans expected Jesus to stay dead, like most people when they die. And God raised Christ to new life to walk among us, forever to be present to us in our baptism and our communion. We can trust that God's kingdom will come because God's promises hold up, like no other promises a person can make. One more story. In Genesis, Abram, before he was Abraham, is really sad that God has still given him no children when he's an old man and he has no heirs to his name. And you know Abraham, the father Abraham, and many sons, boom, boom, many sons. So it's that Abraham. And of course the song has many sons, so that's sort of the kicker of the story. But at this point, he has no sons. And God says to Abram, "Look toward heaven and count the stars, if you are able to." Then God says, "So shall your descendants be." Have you ever tried to count the stars? I have, and I didn't get very far. And I imagine you didn't get very far if you've tried to either. But if you haven't tried, you totally should, because here's the point. God is in the business of helping us realize that no matter how hard we try to count and put limits on God and say, this is who God is and we can count all of it and that's it, God's love and God's promises never end. It's the same with the kingdom of God. God's continual love and justice and healing breaks into the world, and it doesn't stop. Where we want to try and put a period in a sentence, God puts a comma. The kingdom of God is now and not yet, and we live in that hope that Christ will come again to redeem all and save all through God's unrelenting and unconditional love, through our acts of service, but perhaps more importantly, in our neighbor's acts of service, where we are loved and transformed in ways that we never knew possible. Remember how Jesus said, "Do not be afraid, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Sell your possessions and give alms." Jesus is not saying, "Do this or else," or something like that. He's telling us that this is what the kingdom of God looks like. It looks like selling your possessions and giving alms, giving offering. It looks like pointing out injustices in the world and keeping those in power accountable. It looks like serving your neighbor and serving your neighbor in your own neighborhood, And it looks like serving your neighbor really far away in a mission trip, perhaps, with the intent of transforming others by God's love, when in fact you end up being transformed by Jesus' radical love through the poorest of the regions and their hearts and their love, through their love and God's love, not yours. The thousands of people following Jesus here in chapter 12 are so afraid of losing money, losing their family, and thinking that they need to get what they deserve in some way. But Jesus again and again tells them and tells us today, just wait. My kingdom lifts up the lowly and brings down the mighty, and the stars in the sky only begin to tell the story of how things are going to change.